On a summer morning in 1996, one of America's most experienced park rangers walked into the wilderness he knew better than anyone else. He never came back. For 5 years, there was no body, no answers, and no sign of what had happened. Then, hidden beneath a remote waterfall deep inside the mountains, searchers made a discovery that transformed a missing person case into one of the strangest mysteries ever connected to a national park. Because alongside the ranger's remains, investigators reportedly found something that shouldn't have been there at all. A tooth, not his. And according to those who examined it, not human. But that was only the beginning. To understand why the disappearance of Randy Morgenson continues to fascinate investigators decades later, you first have to understand where it happened. Stretching across California's Sierra Nevada mountains, Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks are among the most breathtaking wilderness areas in North America. The landscape is dominated by towering granite peaks, deep canyons, roaring waterfalls, and ancient giant sequoias that have stood for thousands of years. Some of the largest trees on Earth grow there. Walking through these forests can feel less like visiting a park and more like stepping into another world. For decades, stories circulated throughout the region. Visitors and researchers occasionally reported enormous footprints, unusual hair samples, and other unexplained discoveries hidden deep within the wilderness. Whether those stories held any truth remained a matter of debate. But one man knew these mountains better than almost anyone alive. His name was Randy Morgenson. Friends described him as a ranger in the purest sense of the word. He wasn't interested in fame. He wasn't interested in comfort. The wilderness was his home. Throughout his career, Randy participated in countless rescues, helping lost hikers and injured climbers survive some of the most dangerous terrain in the country. On one rescue mission, he was struck in the head by falling rock and nearly lost his life. Yet he returned to the backcountry again and again. Many visitors saw him as a guardian of the mountains. Some even referred to him as the Forest Knight. The title fit, because protecting the wilderness wasn't simply Randy's job. It was his identity. His connection to nature began almost at birth. Born in 1942 inside Yosemite Valley, Randy spent his childhood surrounded by forests, rivers, and mountains. While other children played in neighborhoods, his playground was one of America's most famous national parks. By his teenage years, he was already working seasonal jobs inside Yosemite. Later, he studied recreation and land management, but traditional college life never seemed to satisfy him. Adventure called louder. Eventually, he joined the Peace Corps and traveled to the Himalayas. There, among some of the highest mountains on Earth, he learned advanced climbing techniques from Sherpa mountaineers. The experience changed him. When he returned home, friends noticed he had become quieter and more reflective. The wilderness felt more natural to him than crowded cities ever could. As the years passed, Randy built a life around the mountains. He worked winters in Yosemite and summers in Sequoia and Kings Canyon. In 1971, he met an artist named Judy Douglas. The two eventually married and settled into what appeared to be a stable life together. But Randy's deepest commitment remained the wilderness. By the mid-1990s, he had become the most experienced backcountry ranger in the High Sierra region. Every summer, he lived alone at a remote ranger station more than 10,000 feet above sea level. No roads, no nearby neighbors, no modern comforts, just endless mountains and silence. For most people, it would have felt isolating. For Randy, it felt like home. But beneath the surface, something was changing. As the 1996 season approached, friends began noticing a different side of him. The man who had once seemed completely at peace in the wilderness appeared burdened by something he couldn't escape. In 1993, both of his parents died within the same year. The loss hit him hard. Those close to him said he became increasingly withdrawn. The things that once brought him joy no longer seemed to matter. One day, a co-worker pointed toward a field of wildflowers in bloom. Years earlier, Randy would have admired the view. Instead, he quietly admitted that flowers no longer brought him much happiness. It was a small comment. But for those who knew him, it spoke volumes. At the same time, problems were growing in his personal life. His marriage was falling apart. An affair with another ranger had created tension that could no longer be ignored. Divorce papers now followed him everywhere he went. According to colleagues, Randy once described those documents as the heaviest thing he carried, not because of their physical weight, because of what they represented. The life he thought he had built was slipping away, and then came a conversation that would later haunt everyone who heard about it. The night before Randy disappeared, he spoke over the radio with fellow ranger George Durkee and George's wife. At first, the conversation seemed ordinary, but as it continued, something felt different. Randy asked questions that didn't really require answers, almost as if he simply wanted to keep talking, as if he didn't want the conversation to end. Then, just before signing off, he said something neither listener would ever forget. A sentence that sounded harmless at first, but became chilling after he vanished. "I won't be bothering you two anymore." At the time, nobody knew what to make of it. The next morning, Randy left a handwritten note behind. It stated that he was heading out for several days and that nobody needed to come looking for him. Then he picked up his backpack and left his remote station. Several hikers reportedly encountered him later that day. They said he appeared calm, even cheerful. None of them had any reason to believe they were witnessing the final hours of a man who would soon disappear without a trace. Because after that day, Randy Morgenson was never seen again. When Randy failed to return, concern spread quickly through the ranger community. At first, many assumed he had simply extended his patrol. After all, this was Randy Morgenson, a man who knew every canyon, every ridge, and every hidden corner of the High Sierra. If anyone could survive alone in the wilderness, it was him. But as the days passed, concern turned into alarm, then panic. One of the largest search operations in the park's history was launched. Helicopters thundered over mountain valleys. Search dogs combed remote terrain. Nearly 100 rescuers spread across the wilderness, searching for any sign of the missing ranger. The area under investigation covered roughly 80 square miles of some of the most unforgiving landscape in California. And yet, despite all those resources, Randy seemed to have vanished completely. No confirmed footprints, no blood, no damaged equipment, nothing. Search teams repeatedly followed scent trails picked up by dogs, only for those trails to suddenly end without explanation. One helicopter crew spotted what appeared to be a campfire burning in a remote location. Hope surged through the search effort. Maybe Randy was alive. Maybe he was stranded. But when rescuers reached the site, nobody was there. The fire revealed nothing. Days turned into weeks. The wilderness remained silent. Among the searchers was Randy's closest friend, fellow ranger George Durkee. Unlike many others, George carried a private concern. He knew about Randy's emotional struggles. He knew about the depression. He knew about the collapsing marriage. And he knew Randy had previously spoken about thoughts of ending his own life. Because of that knowledge, George quietly considered possibilities that many others didn't want to imagine. Still, even he couldn't explain the complete absence of evidence. Nothing about the situation made sense. On August 3, 1996, the official search was suspended. The decision was devastating. Despite enormous effort, authorities had found virtually nothing. It was as if the mountains had swallowed Randy whole. Soon, rumors began spreading. Some people believed he had intentionally disappeared to start a new life. Others suggested he had become the victim of a tragic accident hidden somewhere beyond the reach of searchers. A few promoted far stranger explanations, but none of them had proof. For 5 long years, Randy Morgenson remained one of the great unsolved mysteries of the American wilderness. His missing person posters continued hanging at trailheads throughout the region. Rangers continued watching for clues during routine patrols. Yet year after year, the mountains revealed nothing. Then, in July of 2001, everything changed. A group of off-duty trail workers were exploring an isolated section of Kings Canyon National Park near Window Peak. This was not a tourist destination. There were no established trails leading into the area. Very few people ever visited it. The terrain was rugged, hidden, and difficult to reach. As the group moved upstream through a remote canyon, one of them noticed something unusual. A backpack. It appeared abandoned near a series of pools beneath a waterfall. At first, it seemed strange but not alarming. Then they spotted additional items scattered nearby. Equipment, fragments of gear, objects that clearly didn't belong in such a remote location. Curiosity quickly turned into dread. One member of the group moved closer. What he saw next would remain burned into his memory forever. A hiking boot, and protruding from the top of that boot, a human leg bone. The discovery immediately triggered an investigation. The following day, authorities were flown into the area. As they examined the scene, the pieces began falling into place. The backpack matched descriptions of equipment Randy had been carrying when he vanished. Additional personal items were recovered. Among them was a National Park Service identification tag. Eventually, dental records confirmed the truth. After 5 years of mystery, Randy Morgenson had finally been found. or at least part of him had. His remains were located inside a concealed cavity near the base of the waterfall. The location was astonishingly hidden. Investigators noted that finding it during the original search would have been extremely difficult. In fact, it was likely only discovered because someone happened to stumble upon it by accident. The scene itself raised more questions than answers. Fragments of clothing were scattered throughout the area. Several bones were recovered. One leg bone remained inside the hiking boot. Other skeletal remains lay nearby. But then investigators noticed something else, something that would push the case into far stranger territory. Mixed among the remains was a single tooth. At first, investigators assumed it belonged to Randy. That assumption didn't last long. Forensic specialists examined the tooth and immediately realized something was wrong. Very wrong. It wasn't Randy's. According to reports surrounding the investigation, the tooth was unusually large, far larger than what experts would normally expect from a human. Measurements reportedly placed it at roughly 1.5 inches long and about half an inch wide. Those dimensions made it significantly larger than an average human tooth. The discovery left investigators puzzled. Who or what did it belong to? No publicly available explanation ever fully answered that question, and the mystery deepened even further when another object was recovered. Randy's radio. But the radio wasn't found with his remains. Instead, it was discovered above the waterfall, positioned separately from the location where the bones were recovered. Even more strange, it appeared to be switched on. One ranger involved in the original search later stated he had crossed that exact location years earlier. According to him, if the radio had been there during the search, he would have seen it. That observation created a disturbing possibility. If the radio wasn't there in 1996, how did it end up there later? And who put it there? Investigators eventually recovered audio data from the device. What they found would become one of the most debated aspects of the entire case, because hidden inside those recordings were sounds nobody could confidently identify, sounds that continue fueling speculation to this day. When technicians finally restored the recordings recovered from Randy's equipment, investigators hoped they might provide the missing piece of the puzzle. Instead, they created even more questions. The first recording lasted several minutes. At first listen, it sounded like little more than wilderness noise. Wind moving through the canyon, rustling sounds, distant echoes bouncing between rock walls. But after the audio was enhanced, listeners claimed they could hear something unusual buried beneath the background noise. A series of deep vocalizations echoing through the valley. The sound didn't immediately resemble any animal commonly found in the region. Not a bear, not a mountain lion, not a wolf. Whatever produced it appeared to be far away, somewhere beyond the range of the microphone. Yet the calls were powerful enough to carry across the canyon. Some listeners dismissed the sounds as natural wildlife distorted by terrain and weather conditions. Others weren't so sure. Then came the second recording, and this one was far more unsettling. Unlike the first clip, the source of the sound no longer seemed distant. It appeared close. Very close. Listeners reported hearing breathing, movement, the unmistakable impression that something was standing directly in front of the recording device. Whatever was there, it seemed only a few feet away. The first recording appeared to capture something far off in the wilderness. The second suggested that same unknown presence had moved much closer. Then the recording ended. There were no answers, no explanation, and most importantly, no sign of Randy. Authorities acknowledged the existence of the recordings, but never established any official connection between those sounds and Randy's death. As a result, the case remains open to interpretation. Over the years, 4 primary theories emerged. The first theory was deliberate disappearance. Some speculated that Randy staged his own death. As a seasonal ranger, he lacked many of the benefits associated with permanent government employment. However, a death benefit existed that could provide financial support to a designated beneficiary. Supporters of this theory argued Randy may have wanted to ensure someone he cared about received that money. But those who knew him found the idea difficult to accept. Randy had devoted nearly his entire life to the wilderness. His connection to the mountains wasn't financial. It was personal, deeply personal. Most colleagues quickly dismissed the theory. The second theory focused on suicide. Of all the explanations, this one drew significant attention. The emotional warning signs were undeniably present. The deaths of his parents, the collapse of his marriage, the depression, the troubling statements made to close friends, and those haunting final words spoken over the radio. To many observers, the pieces seemed to fit. Yet even this explanation leaves uncomfortable questions behind. If Randy intended to end his life, why tell people he would return in a few days? Why prepare for routine patrol duties? Why carry supplies designed to help him survive emergencies? Those details have never sat comfortably within the suicide theory. The third explanation is the one most commonly accepted by park officials: an accident. According to this theory, Randy may have been crossing unstable terrain near the waterfall when disaster struck. A snow bridge or hidden section of ground could have collapsed beneath him. He may have fallen into the canyon, suffered severe injuries, and become trapped. Unable to move, unable to reach help, unable to transmit a signal from the steep walls surrounding him. Exposure, injury, and isolation could have done the rest. From a practical standpoint, it remains the most straightforward explanation. The wilderness can be unforgiving, even for experts, and accidents happen every year in remote mountain terrain. Yet some elements still remain difficult to explain. The concealed location of the remains, the radio's position, and perhaps most importantly, the mysterious tooth. Then there is the fourth theory, the one that transformed Randy's disappearance into a legend. For decades, stories of unexplained encounters circulated throughout Sequoia and Kings Canyon. Massive footprints, strange vocalizations, unknown hair samples, reports of something large moving through remote sections of forest. Most of these claims were impossible to verify. Many were likely misidentifications, but they persisted. Adding fuel to the speculation were later discoveries that some researchers believed pointed toward an unknown creature inhabiting isolated wilderness areas. Supporters of this theory argue that Randy may have encountered something never officially recognized by science, something hidden deep within the mountains, something capable of explaining the unusual evidence recovered years later. Skeptics reject the idea entirely. They point out that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and despite decades of stories, no definitive proof has ever emerged. That debate continues to this day, which leaves us exactly where investigators found themselves years ago, standing at the edge of a mystery, searching for answers. Randy Morgenson dedicated his life to protecting one of the wildest landscapes in America. He knew its trails, its rivers, its dangers. If anyone understood those mountains, it was him. And yet somehow, the wilderness he loved became the place where he vanished. Perhaps the truth was a tragic accident hidden by impossible terrain. Perhaps it was something far more complicated. Or perhaps the mountains still hold secrets no one has uncovered. What we know for certain is this. On July 21, 1996, Randy Morgenson walked into the High Sierra wilderness alone. 5 years later, only fragments of the story were found. And somewhere between those two moments, the most important chapter disappeared forever. Because even today, the mountains know what happened to Randy Morgenson, and they still aren't talking,